Imagine this: the global economy grinds to a halt, but not because of a stock market crash or a tech failure. It collapses because mums stop packing school lunches, grandmas stop babysitting, teachers walk away from underfunded classrooms, and millions of mostly invisible workers, cooks, cleaners, caretakers, stop doing the unpaid, undervalued work that holds society together. Welcome to social reproduction theory, a radical but deeply intuitive concept that flips our view of labour on its head. While most people think of work as jobs that generate income, this theory asks, what about the labour that makes all other labour possible? What about the work done in kitchens, nurseries, classrooms and hospitals? The emotional labour, the caregiving, the raising of the next generation of workers. These tasks don't show up on GDP charts, they aren't counted on balance sheets, but without them, nothing else functions. Social reproduction refers to the vast daily process of maintaining and reproducing human life. It includes everything from child rearing and elder care to cooking, cleaning, emotional support, and basic health maintenance. In other words, everything capitalism silently relies on but refuses to pay for. Here's the kicker: this labour is overwhelmingly performed by women, especially women of colour and immigrant women, often unpaid, often invisible, but always essential. This is the paradox at the heart of our economy. It cannot function without reproductive labour, but it has no system for honouring, compensating, or even recognising that labour. And the less the government funds education, healthcare, childcare, or housing, the more these responsibilities fall on individual households, on unpaid caregivers, on mothers, on grandmothers, on underpaid domestic workers. This shift isn't accidental. It's the direct result of policy choices and cultural narratives that treat care as women's work instead of society's responsibility. And when care becomes privatised, when it's expected to be handled quietly behind closed doors, it becomes easier to ignore, to dismiss, to exploit. Think about it. We praise entrepreneurs for creating jobs, but we rarely stop to ask who raised the workers those jobs depend on. We talk about productivity, growth, and efficiency, but who makes sure the people behind those numbers are fed, rested, educated, and emotionally supported? That's the heart of social reproduction theory. To survive, society needs more than profit, it needs people, cared for, nurtured, sustained. And until we value that labour, we'll keep building an economy on the backs of those we refuse to acknowledge. Let's shift from theory to the feed. Social reproduction is mostly invisible, but on social media, it gets repackaged, filtered, hashtagged, aestheticized. The daily work of caregiving becomes content, and once again, platforms benefit more than the people doing the work. Enter the momfluencer. Millions of women, often mothers, document their parenting routines, cleaning hacks, school chaos, all homemade lunch boxes. At first it seems empowering, a way to give voice and visibility to domestic labour. But look closer. What's rewarded isn't caregiving itself. It's how well it performs online, how brand-friendly, aesthetic, organised, or emotionally polished it is. Mothers who show mess, exhaustion, breakdowns, they are often punished by the algorithm, hidden, demonetized, or flooded with criticism. Meanwhile, soft-lit reels with gentle parenting captions, clean homes, and perfect toddlers, that's the version that becomes marketable. Social reproduction doesn't disappear online. It's just transformed into emotional labor for strangers and a business model for platforms. The same platforms that offer zero childcare, zero healthcare, zero support. Here's the trap. The very work once ignored at home now must be commodified online just to exist. And that means more labor, not less. Filming, editing, managing a personal brand, all unpaid, unless you go viral. Even then, what's the cost of constantly performing motherhood for an audience? And this goes beyond parenting. Care work appears online in many forms. Young people helping aging parents, women coping with burnout, families documenting daily survival. Each post is reproductive labor turned into content, hoping for validation in a world that still won't pay for care unless it entertains. Even activism isn't immune. Videos on teacher burnout or elder care collapse often go viral, not because people deeply care, but because suffering is clickable. That's the darker truth. Social media doesn't fix invisibility, it monetizes it, as long as it's packaged right. There's irony here. Millions scroll past acts of unpaid labor daily. Meals cooked, wounds cleaned, kids raised, without realizing they're watching the economy's backbone perform itself for free. Worse, viewers expect that performance. They feel entitled to it. So now, reproductive labor must not just be done, but made public. And if it's not polished or profitable, it vanishes from the feed. The algorithm is not neutral. It doesn't just float through content, picking whatever's good. It decides actively and constantly what gets seen, what gets buried, what gets rewarded. And when it comes to reproductive labor, caregiving, homemaking, emotional support, the algorithm has clear preferences. It favors caregiving that's aesthetic over honest, marketable over messy, individualized over systemic. Because platforms are built to sell aspiration, not reality. So what happens? Mothers, caretakers, even exhausted students begin performing caregiving for the camera, not because they want to, but because that's what the algorithm rewards. And if you don't fit the aesthetic, if you show the exhaustion, the resentment, the unpaid hours, you're filtered out. Not because you're irrelevant, but because you're not clickable. The pressure to perform your caregiving correctly becomes another layer of labor. On top of the cooking, cleaning, and emotional caretaking, now you also need to package your work for strangers online. This isn't just a social media problem. It's a reflection of how society has always treated reproductive labor. But what would it look like to value care, even when it's messy, even when it's slow, even when it doesn't come with a caption or a sponsorship? Every society depends on someone doing this labor. And the longer we ignore it, the more we exploit those doing it, quietly, endlessly, and often alone.